Welcome to the Maverrik podcast, business growth tips and discussions to make you the expert in demand. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Maverrik podcast. I'm Ropa and today I'm joined by Mellisa Kwan. Hey Melissa, it's really nice to see you and have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great. So you have started 3 startups, haven't you, right?
Yes, this is my third one.
Yeah, this is your third startup. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the first 2 and then we'll get really into the third one?
Yeah, so I've been in startups for 12 years. The last job that I quit was at SAP, which was a big software company. And my first 2 companies were both in real estate technology. The previous company was in SaaS as well. Ran that for about 5 years, which was acquired in 2019. After that, I very quickly started eWebinar, and eWebinar is actually a company that I started because of a problem that I had experienced in my previous one.
Okay. So with, creating startups, did you face any challenges or failures? And how did you learn from them and grow from them and obviously become, and create eWebinar as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're always learning and you're always making mistakes in startups and just in life in general. But I think what I learned the most from my previous 2 companies was all the things I didn't want to do.
Okay.
So I think you come into I'm not from an entrepreneur family, so I didn't really have a basis for what it meant to build a company. And I had, I guess, done a lot of things that not so much I would do differently, but like a lot of things that I didn't like to do. So for example, my previous company was we sold software to like enterprise. So while it was a big ticket item, with expensive software also comes a lot of customer success, a lot of customizations, a lot of conferences, trade shows that you have to go to. So there's almost like an expectation that you have to service a company or customize your software in a different way. Whereas right now, we're charging $100, $200, per month per customer. So with that kind of amount, no one's expecting to text you or call you in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And you're not really expected to join, conferences or trade shows or go see customers face to face. So I guess it's because I did a lot of that in my previous companies that I decided, whatever I do next, like has to be sold 100%, through the internet if I wanted to.
Yeah. Okay.
So that was like one of the biggest learnings, for example.
Yeah. Okay. So you talk about as well, intentionally designing, your life. And I guess what you're saying as well is, there were certain things in your past, maybe companies that you weren't so keen on doing, but you felt like you had to. How have you created eWebinar to intentionally, design your life and fit your lifestyle around what you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I guess to give some context, what eWebinar is it helps people automate webinars. So, if you don't know what a webinar is, you're probably, living under a rock at this point. I think after 2020, like everyone's leveraging them in their business in some way, right? Whether it's a webinar or a live meeting or a live stream, right? It's basically being able to live broadcast yourself, whether it's for, a sales pitch or a training or a demo, like whatever it might be. You might not even be in a software business, and that would be an imperative part of your business process. So in my previous company, I was doing those all the time, right? Whether it's a sales demo or whether it's onboarding or training, but I was also like nomading. So not only was I doing these repetitive onboarding and trainings all the time, sometimes 7 or 8 of them back to back in one day, I was also doing them on opposite time zones of my customer.
Wow.
So I had always, kind of imagined this product that would do my job for me while I could go and have fun, right? Or like literally do anything else. So it just didn't make sense to me that a person, let alone the founder of a company, would have to do the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
But also we were a bootstrap company, so it wasn't like there was someone else doing them for me. So I always imagined a life where I could just have ultimate freedom, right? For me, that meant, getting up whenever I want, right? Or, having really late nights, because I'm not a morning person. So I actually get up super late. I like to have super late nights, and I design all, like I basically work at the hours that I want to.
Okay.
And so I had always kind of envisioned this life where I could do that. But in my previous life, in my previous company, I wasn't able to do that because I was bounded by the webinars that I had to do.
Yeah.
And because any new customer that comes on, like if they don't learn my product, it's not their fault, it's my fault.
Yeah.
So I had to constantly deliver this stuff. So the way that I kind of intentionally designed, my life around this particular company is this product that we're building right now actually allows me and more people like me to, I guess, automate themselves, right? Clone themselves so they don't have to be there 24/7 for their business. So I
Yeah.
guess that's kind of the biggest thing is um, design. Like I basically create a product to allow myself to have that freedom. And now we're using this every single day in our own business as well.
Okay, that's great. So would you say like that's the inspiration, I guess, that you had to create eWebinar? Did you find inspiration by kind of looking at your own life and thinking, oh, okay, this is the parts of my job where, this is repetitive and this is what I have to be doing. And did you take inspiration from that to create eWebinar?
I mean, I just basically live that
Yeah.
problem every single day. And back then I had found like other pieces of software, like other solutions that would do similar things,
Okay.
but not really designed and built out to the extent that I wanted it to, right? It
Yeah.
was like almost like the difference between, a GeoCities website and what a Squarespace or Wix is today. Like there were things out there, but they just weren't that great. And I was never
Yeah.
really they didn't align with my brand, and I wasn't very
Okay.
proud, to use software that didn't really align with the effort that we had put in to design it. So not so much an inspiration, but I definitely wanted to solve that problem very
Yeah.
badly. And I think it's funny because people say like, oh, you started a webinar company because you really love webinars. I actually started a webinar company because there was nothing else I hated more than running the webinars. And I
Yeah.
wanted to create a product so that people didn't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And I was one of those people.
I think that's always great, when you've got a business idea that not only benefits, other people as well, but benefits you. Like you can see a pain point that people face and people have, and you can see a way out of it. And I think that's a great way to start a business. With like starting at eWebinar, with that in particular, did you have any challenges or any problems when, starting this? Did you know exactly how you wanted it to run? Did you know exactly the process that you wanted it to follow? Or did you have any hiccups, I guess?
I mean, I think every day is a challenge. Again, that's a really big question.
Yeah.
I mean, everything's a challenge, right? Like it's a bootstrap company, so funding it is a challenge, right? Building
Okay.
it with very, very limited resources is a challenge. I haven't
Yeah.
paid myself for 3.5 years. That's also a challenge,
Yeah.
right? So, but also I think right now, I think the biggest challenge right now with anyone that has a software company, especially that's a new one, is consumer expectations are higher than they've ever been.
Yeah.
So while it might be easy to start a company, it's extremely hard to get someone to pay for your software. It's getting harder and harder for people to get their credit card out and then also stay. So while I think it's getting
Yeah.
easier for people to start companies, it's getting harder and harder to win customers and also keep them on a long-term basis. And maybe you're not competing directly with someone in your space because we don't have a ton of like direct competitors, but there's just a lot of substitutes that people can go to, right? There's a lot of different
Yeah.
ways to run a business, and it's just really hard to keep mind share. So I think that's like the biggest challenge that we deal with right now.
That you faced. Yeah, that's interesting. With like, obviously you said you're bootstrapped, aren't you?
Yeah.
Are you able, I think you've mentioned before, I think on LinkedIn or something, I was having a look at your profile that you're able to work remotely.
Yeah, we only
And
work
also,
remotely,
yeah,
actually.
yeah. And also you've obviously mentioned as well that, you're not really a morning person and you like to get up when you want to and sleep when you want to as well. With you being able to work remotely with your company, how do you find the right balance between, your work-life balance as you are the CEO, obviously? How do you find that right work-life balance to, keep improving the business, but being like, okay, I need to take a bit of a step back here and really relax?
Yeah, I think in my previous company, I didn't have much of that because
Okay.
we just didn't have. So in my previous company, we didn't have a great product. So
Okay.
it was much harder to sell. And that also meant that I had to work a lot harder to get new deals to come in.
Yeah.
With eWebinar, it's a much more solid product. It's more applicable to many different industries. My previous company was just for real estate and for
Okay.
companies in the US, right? eWebinar is agnostic across language, geography, lines of business, industry. So there are a lot more potential customers that are out there, but they pay a lot less, right? My previous company was like minimum contract size was 10,000 a year.
Okay.
But where we are today is, $99 a month kind of thing. So we just need a lot more people in order to have meaningful revenue. But I think the most important thing for any founder is just to have boundaries in your business,
Yeah.
especially when you work remote. I think a lot of people are working remote now. Like, for example, I take my weekends very seriously. I
Yeah.
barely touch anything on the weekends. Of course, customers have to come first, but I generally don't work on the weekends, and I
Okay.
encourage my team not to do that unless something goes down, and we
Yeah.
just have to fix it.
Yeah.
But that's also kind of an earned privilege, right? So everybody kind of has their own schedule, but they understand that, hey, like if the product or the company or the customer needs you, you have to be there. And for me, like, I think it's hard because there's always something new to do.
Yeah.
But I'm also resolved right now, after 10 years of doing this, knowing that there are very few things that you can't wait until tomorrow.
Okay.
Like, if there's a wedding that I want to go to, I'm going to it. Or,
Yeah.
if we want to go for dinner, I'm going, right? Like, and I don't force myself to work extra hours, right? Like, I think that's kind of a very unhealthy mindset for a lot of founders to feel like, oh, I
Okay.
have to work more, I have to work harder, or like for the sake of working harder. Like, I think what I've realized is working more does not actually mean you're more productive or
Yeah.
that you're going to be more successful. We don't need to work more. In fact, we have to work more creatively.
Okay.
And I think if you have that mindset, then you can have boundaries in your business that allow you to take the time off that you need without feeling guilty that you're not working enough.
Do you think that mindset comes from, do you think you can be born with it, or do you think that comes from experience and, learning through different ways and having those ups and downs in a business? Or do you just think that's something you either have or you don't have?
Well, I think it's definitely one, I think it's like a learned skill, but I
Yeah.
also think it's an earned privilege, right?
Okay.
So because this is my third company, I had sold my previous company, so I do have some financial freedom to be able to do that. Like, in
Yeah.
my previous company, I really didn't know what I was doing, so it was just a lot harder for us to come up with a product that was really compelling. And it was a lot harder to sell that product. So I needed to work a lot harder because I had
Yeah.
my team to pay, right? That was the reality. But I also think that as you get more experience with the business that you're building, you learn to create products that have your market shares, or you also learn to define better who you want your customers to be. So you don't work with customers that might not be great customers that actually suck up all of your time, or people
Yeah.
that aren't willing to pay for the value that you're delivering, right? So from that perspective, I think it's almost like learned and earned, but you
Okay.
can be more aware as you have more experience around the business that you have and who you want to serve. That maybe you have, for example, less customers that pay you more
Okay.
versus a lot of demanding customers that might not really value your business.
Yeah. With that as well, so, having customers that value your business, how have you found selling, through a webinar? Do you find it adds more personality or makes it more personal, or does it make it more like impersonal?
Well, I don't think it's like personal or impersonal. I
Okay.
think nowadays, like, we're serving customers all around the world,
Yeah.
right? Like, the days of door-to-door selling or the days of only being able to sell at a conference is gone, right? Like, I
Yeah.
don't know a single company that's not like especially software companies that are only serving like their local community,
No,
right?
yeah.
So I think it's almost like the only way to sell nowadays is through live stream and live meetings, whether it's one-on-one or one-to-many. Like this is the medium that people almost expect. But even if you are local, right, people don't want to meet face to face anymore,
Yeah.
right? Like one face to face meeting takes 2 to 3 hours, right? Like you have to prep, you have to go there, you have to have lunch, and
Yeah.
then you go back to your office, right? It's just not a real efficient use of someone's time.
Yeah.
But I think that people love webinars because there is an authenticity to it, right? It's
Okay.
not a produced educational video that's scripted, right? Through a webinar, people really get to understand who's behind the camera
Yeah.
because you make mistakes, right? It's not a perfect video. Like it's a little bit fuzzy. And if you say something wrong, you get to say it again. So it just feels more authentic.
It feels more
Um,
relatable. Yeah.
yeah, it just feels more relatable. And I think people love that.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's such an effective medium. I think something like 90% of marketers believe that like webinars are like their most effective channel or something like that. I think that's a stat.
Okay.
But I think authenticity has a lot to do with it because I think nowadays, like people care about like who you are, not just what the
Yeah.
company is and the company's selling, right? So I think I think we're still kind of at the tip of the iceberg on like how we leverage this medium to not just like directly sell, but also build relationships with our customers after they buy.
Yeah. So with that as well, do you think that, webinars and kind of more video content as well, because even on social media platforms, you see a lot more of a push towards video style content. And like you said, it is to see the personality and to see like even the flaws, I guess, as well of the business and the person behind the business. Do you think that video content will stay at the top, or do you think there's like a chance of, written content or static photo content coming back and being at the top?
I mean, I think we're always going to be progressing forward,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I think that it just depends, right? I don't think there's going to be like definitely. I think video will continue to be on the rise.
Okay.
There is nothing else like video, right?
No.
Like if you're looking at every single social media channel, like whether it's YouTube, right? Like one of the biggest search engines, right? If
Hmm.
not like second greatest search engines, or if we're talking about like Instagram or TikTok, like it's all video. Like I have friends that don't send voicemails on text. They send a video of themselves
Yeah.
talking because they, oh, it's more personal. For the first time in history, it's super affordable to have that bandwidth. It's so easy. Like we have all of our devices that have all this memory that allow us to do that, right? Like I just came to Vietnam last week and I got a SIM card for $10 with
Yeah.
unlimited data every day,
Okay.
right? Like and the
Yeah.
first time we have that. So and that's why I think we're just kind of on the tip of the iceberg of exploring like how big this video thing can be. But I think the future of webinars is asynchronous, which is what we're
Yeah.
doing is it doesn't have to be live, right? That's what eWebinar is. Like I think right now when
Yeah.
people think about webinar, they think, oh, last time I was on a Zoom, or like, oh, I have a Zoom webinar that's next Tuesday at 11. But that actually doesn't make sense to me, right? Because if we consume video content in every other avenue of our lives, we expect to go there and press play. Whereas when we deliver a B2B style training content, we tell people or we tell our customers, oh, you can only watch it next Tuesday at 11, my time zone. And then
Yeah.
nobody actually makes it, right? Like the attendance rate of traditional webinars are actually really low. It's like something like sub 25%. Like the average attendance rate of all of our customers for eWebinar is 65%. And that's
Oh,
because it's
wow.
recurring or it's on
Yeah.
demand. So I think the future of especially B2B video content, including webinars, has to be asynchronous. You have to give
Yeah.
people the ability to press play when they want. Otherwise, they've moved on to something else or they feel inconvenienced
Yeah.
if they have to follow, your schedule. So that's kind of where I see like the future of video going. And I actually do see more like interactive video being the future. Right. I think
Okay.
like, Instagram Live or, TikTok has an element of that, right? You can
Yeah.
comment on it right now, but I may be able to see your comment tomorrow. I think there's going to be more innovation on like what kind of interactivity gets layered on top
Yeah.
of just the video, right? Maybe it's the reactions, it's the hearts, it's the emojis, or maybe it's
Yeah.
maybe it's the comments. But I think the innovation in video is going to go that route. It's going to allow people to be able to interact with it right now, but for a future viewer to be able to see how you interact with it. So everyone's getting the same experience or a more engaged experience the more
Yeah.
it plays.
I think that's a great way to look at it. I don't think I've ever really looked at it like that before, because even with Instagram, they've added reactions. So you can
Yeah.
add a reaction straight away onto like a reel or something like that. So I think you're right. There will be a more, engaged audience watching who want to be there, want to see your content. And it will be this, hopefully it will be the same for webinars as well. Do you have any tips, I guess, for anyone who wants to do webinars or hasn't started yet? Like, how would they start? Where would they start? All of those kind of tips.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the idea of doing a webinar is kind of scary, right? Because
Yeah,
especially if you've never done
terrifying.
it before, because
Yeah,
it's almost like public speaking. Like you are public speaking, but then
yeah,
there's no feedback. So in a sense, it's like better and worse, right? Because I'm not in front of a
yeah,
room, but I'm also not getting any feedback. Like no one's laughing, no one's like
yeah.
giving me any cues as to whether they like my content or not. So should I keep going? Should I not keep going?
Mhm.
But that's actually one of the reasons why like we started eWebinar and why eWebinar is like, of course, I'm the founder, so I'm going to say it's better. But we actually do have people say, oh, I never did a webinar before you guys because I was scared that nobody would show up.
Yeah,
And while we didn't build it for that, like that's almost like a byproduct. And it was really cool to hear that feedback because we also want to encourage people to do this for the first time,
mhm.
right? Because for an eWebinar, all you need is video. So you can record yourself on, a Loom or QuickTime, whatever you're recording your screen on. Or you can record a conversation that you have with someone on, Google Meet or on Zoom and make that your video. And then put it in eWebinar and then you can deliver it. Like if you deliver an automated webinar, it doesn't matter if one person shows up or nobody shows up or 100 people show up, right? It's
Yeah,
still playing right on its own. So I think my suggestion for someone who wants to get into it is don't overthink it, right? Because the only person that's going to know that you're not perfect is you.
yeah,
Like everyone else is going to be like, oh, cool. Like there's something I can go to and learn from it. But I would say that in particular, if you're afraid to do something live, consider doing like just recording yourself on a video and delivering it on eWebinar
okay,
and see how you feel about that and get feedback. And don't worry about the video not being perfect, right? If you say something
yeah,
wrong, say it over again, just as you would on a regular webinar. Like no one's going to notice, right? In
yeah,
fact, they're going to relate to you more as a person than, as someone who is like maybe too fully rehearsed.
yeah. I think you're right there as well. I think there is a lot of pressure on presenting a webinar, because I think it is that word, presenting. Because if you were in a meeting face to face, you would make mistakes and that would be okay, and you'd just kind of brush over it and then say what you wanted to say in the first place. But I think you're right there. There is a lot of pressure when maybe there shouldn't be so much pressure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Did you have anything else that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is just putting something out there and getting feedback, right?
Yeah,
Like if you're not getting feedback, then you can't improve whether it's your presentation or whether it's your product or service. And that's why I always encourage people to just put something out there first. You can always iterate on it later. But if you're trying to get something too perfect, then you're kind of just delaying that process,
yeah,
right? So um, the only way to make something better is to just get customer feedback.
yeah. And ultimately, your audience are going to be the people who tell you what to add, what to take away, or how to improve. And they're the people, that's the opinion that matters at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it was great to have you on the podcast, and hopefully we can do this again some other time. Um, Thank you guys so much for watching this episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Melissa's details will be down below as well. So if you want to go check her out, they'll be down below in the description box. See you guys later.